My name is Evelyn Carter. I am 78 years old, a retired school principal who spent her life nurturing other people's children and raising her only son, David, with everything I had. I thought I had done well. I thought love and sacrifice were enough. But as I stood in that courtroom, trembling from head to toe, I realized love was not enough to protect me from the evil hidden in my own blood. The judge's gavel hit the wooden block, calling the room to order. My son David sat confidently beside his wife, Amanda, their smug expressions telling the world they were certain of victory. They had painted me as a demented, senile old woman who could no longer make decisions for herself. They claimed I was hallucinating, forgetting names, even wandering off in the middle of the night. Their goal was clear. They wanted control over my estate, my house, my savings, everything I had worked for my entire life. And the worst part, they were so convincing that even my closest friends began to doubt me. Amanda leaned close to David, whispering something with a smirk. I could barely breathe as their lawyer stood, presenting documents proving my incompetence. They said I talked to walls. They said I mixed up the names of my grandchildren. They even said I once forgot how to cook. A ridiculous lie, but one that still stung. The courtroom murmured as their evidence stacked against me like a mountain I could never climb. My lawyer, Mr. Daniels, remained calm. I couldn't understand why he wasn't panicking like I was. I tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "They're winning. They're going to take everything." He gave me a reassuring nod and said only one thing, "Trust me." When it was finally our turn, he stood and said, "Your Honor, the defense has submitted claims of Mrs. Carter's alleged dementia. But we have something that tells a very different story. With the court's permission, we'd like to play a video." The judge agreed, and the room fell silent as the screen came to life. The first few seconds were shaky, then crystal clear. There I was, sitting in my living room, clutching a blanket, while Amanda screamed at me, calling me useless and crazy. The video showed her grabbing my arm so hard I winced. David appeared next, shoving me into my chair, yelling that I was just an old burden. Gasps filled the courtroom. The footage continued. Me crying quietly, them laughing at my tears, taking my phone away so I couldn't call anyone. Every single abuse, every cruel word I had endured in silence, was now playing for the world to see. Amanda's face went pale. David's smugness melted into pure horror. The judge leaned forward, eyebrows raised, and said, "Is this the woman you claim is demented? Because what I see is clear abuse." The room erupted. I felt my knees weaken, my heart pounding against my ribs. For the first time they were the ones who looked small. But just as I thought victory was mine, the judge slammed the gavel again and said, "This changes everything. However, there is still one more testimony we must hear before making a final decision." Froze. Who else could possibly testify? And what secret were they about to reveal? Stay with me because what happened next shocked the entire courtroom and turned my world upside down. You won't believe what was said next. If you're following my story, don't go anywhere. The truth is just beginning to unravel, and I need you to hear every word. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. When the judge called for the final witness, I felt my heart stop. The doors at the back of the courtroom creaked open, and in walked someone I never thought I'd see standing there on my behalf, our former housemaid Lisa. My eyes widened, and so did David's. His face twisted with panic, while Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Lisa had worked for me for nearly 15 years before David and Amanda fired her abruptly when they moved into my house to take care of me. I hadn't seen her since that day. She walked up to the witness stand, calm and determined, and swore to tell the truth. "Mrs. Carter is not demented," Lisa said firmly, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom. "She is as sharp as ever. I worked for her for years. She taught me how to budget, how to read legal papers, how to run a household. The only time she seemed confused was when her son and daughter-in-law deliberately hid her medications and then accused her of forgetting to take them." Gasps rippled through the courtroom again. Lisa continued, her words cutting deeper than any knife. They would take her phone away, lock her inside her own room, and tell neighbors she was paranoid. They controlled who could visit. I even saw Amanda pour alcohol into Mrs. Carter's tea, just so she'd slur her words when guests came over. Amanda jumped to her feet. "That's a lie," she shouted, but the judge quickly silenced her. Lisa wasn't done. She explained how David forged my signature on certain financial documents and tried to transfer property into his name. The judge scribbled notes furiously as the truth spilled out. The courtroom was in chaos, but in that moment I felt something inside me ignite. For months, I had been made to feel small, weak, and powerless. But now the world was finally hearing my side. My hands stopped shaking. My voice grew steady as I asked the judge if I could speak. "Go ahead, Mrs. Carter," he said. I stood, every eye in the room on me, and I said, "I may be 78, but I am not demented. I am not weak. I built everything I have with my own hands. My son and his wife wanted to make me believe I was worthless, but the only ones who are truly lost are them. They forgot who raised them, who loved them, who gave them everything." My voice cracked, but I kept going. "This is not just about property. This is about dignity." The judge nodded slowly, clearly moved. But just as I sat down, David stood up and shouted, "You think you've won, Mom? You have no idea what's coming. You'll regret this." His outburst earned him a warning from the judge, but his words sent a shiver down my spine. After the hearing was adjourned for the day, I walked out of the courtroom with my lawyer. Reporters swarmed us, shouting questions. Mr. Daniels shielded me, whispering, "We're winning, Evelyn. But be careful. They're desperate now. Desperate people do desperate things." That night I returned to my house. My house, but it didn't feel safe. The shadows in the corners seemed to move. Every creak in the floor made me jump. I double-checked all the locks, yet I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying David's threat in my head. What could he possibly mean? Around midnight, I heard footsteps outside my window. Slow, deliberate steps. My heart pounded as I peeked through the curtains. Someone was there, standing in the dark, watching. I couldn't make out their face, but the silhouette was familiar. My hands trembled as I dialed the police, but before they arrived, the figure was gone, vanished into the night. The next morning I found something chilling on my porch. A single torn photograph of me and David, ripped right through the middle with a note that said, "You should have stayed quiet." Fear gripped me, but so did anger. They wanted me to be silent, to be weak, to be the trembling old woman they could manipulate. But I wasn't going to let them win. Not now. Not ever. I took that note, placed it in my purse, and went straight to my lawyer. "They're threatening me," I said, handing him the evidence. His jaw tightened. "Then it's time to use everything we've got. Are you ready for what's coming, Evelyn?" He nodded. "I've been ready my whole life. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened the next day in court. When the judge revealed the shocking evidence hidden deep within my own house, the truth shattered everything I thought I knew. The war had only just begun, and the next revelation would shake everyone to their core. Stay with me, because what comes next is beyond anything you can imagine. Don't miss it. Like, comment, and subscribe so you're here when the storm hits. The next morning, the courthouse buzzed with tension. The air felt heavy, as if everyone inside knew something explosive was about to happen. I clutched my purse tightly, the torn photograph still inside, as I made my way to the front row with my lawyer. David and Amanda were already seated. Their eyes met mine, full of venom. Amanda leaned close to him and whispered something, and they both smirked as though they still had the upper hand. The judge entered, and the courtroom stood. When we sat again, the judge said, "Before we proceed, the court has been presented with new evidence submitted anonymously. It pertains to the ongoing claims of abuse and manipulation in this case." My stomach flipped. Anonymous evidence. What could this be? A technician wheeled in a small projector and connected it to the judge's screen. The lights dimmed, and a new video began to play. I froze as I saw the inside of my own bedroom, the room where I had been humiliated and locked up so many nights. The footage was from a tiny hidden camera I didn't even know was there. The video played me sitting quietly reading a book. Amanda entered, grabbed the book from my hands, and threw it across the room. "You can't even remember what you're reading, can you? Pathetic," she sneered. The video showed me crying, pleading with her to stop. Then David walked in, laughing. "Mom, you're useless. Just sign the papers. Sign everything to us so we can at least get something out of you." Gasps filled the room again. I felt my heart clench, seeing myself so vulnerable on the screen, but at the same time, a deep sense of vindication burned in my chest. They could no longer deny what they had done. Then came the part that made my blood run cold. The footage showed Amanda holding a small bottle and pouring something into my tea. My voice trembled as I whispered, "No, no." I remembered that night vividly. I had been dizzy, disoriented, and they accused me of drinking too much. Now the truth was clear. They were drugging me to make me appear senile. The judge slammed the gavel. "This is beyond elder abuse. This is criminal behavior." Amanda tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "That's not what it looks like. She's lying. She made us do it." The judge cut her off sharply. "Silence. The video speaks for itself." David's lawyer looked pale, flipping through his notes nervously. The court erupted into murmurs. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, and the entire room seemed to close in on David and Amanda. But just when I thought they were cornered, David stood up, his voice trembling with rage. "You think this is over, Mom? You think some stupid video changes everything? You don't know what you've started." His eyes were wild, and before the judge could order him to sit down, he shouted, "She's hiding things too. Tell them about the money, Mom. Tell them what you did." The room fell silent. My heart skipped a beat. What money? I hadn't hidden anything, at least not that I remembered. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Carter, if you have something to say, present it as evidence. This courtroom is not a place for shouting." David sat back down, but his glare never left me. He knew something I didn't. I turned to my lawyer, whispering, "What is he talking about?" Mr. Daniels looked concerned. "We'll find out soon enough. Stay strong, Evelyn." The rest of the day blurred. The judge ordered a recess, saying more investigation was needed into the poisoning and possible forgery. As I left the courthouse, reporters surrounded me, shouting questions. "Mrs. Carter, how do you feel about your son's accusations? What's the truth about the hidden money?" I said nothing, only clutching my bag tighter. That night, as I sat alone in my house, the memories started to flood back. There was a safe in the basement, a safe I hadn't opened in years. Inside were documents, savings bonds, and some old letters my late husband had left me. Could David have found something in there? Or was this just another lie to break me? I decided to check. Slowly, I made my way to the basement. The safe was there, covered in dust. My hands trembled as I turned the dial, the click of each number echoing in the silence. Finally it opened. Inside I found everything I remembered: bonds, papers, and letters. But there was also something I didn't recognize: an envelope with my name written in my husband's handwriting. My heart pounded as I tore it open. Inside was a note that read, "If anything happens to me, do not trust David. Protect what I've left for you." My breath caught in my throat. Tears welled in my eyes. My husband had known. He had known this day would come. But before I could process the weight of his warning, I heard the basement door creak shut behind me. Someone was in the house. I turned, my voice trembling. "Who's there?" Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. A shadow stretched across the floor, growing larger. I clutched the envelope to my chest, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Then I saw him, David, standing in the doorway, his face twisted with anger. "I told you to stop digging, Mom," he said, stepping closer. My knees nearly gave out as he locked the door behind him. "You're making this harder than it has to be." And that's when I realized, I might not make it out of that basement alive. Stay with me, because what happened in that basement changed everything. You won't believe the twist that came next. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens in the next chapter. The basement felt colder than ever, the dim light flickering above as David moved closer. His eyes were wild, the kind of rage that doesn't care about consequences. I clutched the envelope to my chest, my trembling hands giving away my fear. "Give me that," he snarled, pointing at the letter. My voice cracked, but I stood my ground. "This was from your father. He knew what you'd become." David lunged forward, yanking the envelope from my grip. I stumbled back, hitting the cold concrete wall. "You have no idea what's at stake here," he hissed. "Do you think this is about you? This is about me finally getting what I deserve. I sacrificed my life to take care of you, and you repay me by turning the whole world against me." "You didn't take care of me," I whispered. "You locked me up. You drugged me. You tried to make me believe I was losing my mind." His jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw a flash of guilt. But it was gone as quickly as it came. "You don't understand, Mom. Amanda and we're in debt. We needed the money. You have so much, and you were just sitting on it while we were drowning." My heart ached, but not for him, for the boy I raised, who was now unrecognizable. "So you tried to destroy me to save yourself?" Before he could answer, a loud banging came from upstairs. The sound of the front door crashing open echoed through the house. David froze, his face twisting in panic. "Who's here?" "Police," a voice shouted. "Drop whatever you're holding and come out with your hands up." Mr. Daniels had done it. He had sent help. David backed away, cursing under his breath. He shoved the letter back into my hands, muttering, "This isn't over." Then, like a coward, he slipped through the basement side door and disappeared into the night just as officers stormed down the stairs. They helped me up, their voices calm but urgent. "Ma'am, you're safe now. We need to get you out of here." The next day, the police issued a warrant for David's arrest. Amanda was already being questioned about the poisoning and the abuse. The video evidence had gone viral overnight. Everyone in town was talking about it. My name was suddenly on every news channel, not as a victim, but as a fighter. Yet I felt no joy, no triumph. The manhunt for my own son left me hollow inside. 2 days later, during the next court session, Amanda broke down under pressure. She confessed to everything. How they planned to have me declared incompetent, how they poisoned me, how they forged documents to transfer my assets. But she didn't stop there. She revealed something far worse. "David has been hiding money overseas," she cried. "Millions. He told me he'd make sure his mother signed over everything so he could protect it. But really, he just wanted it for himself." The judge's face darkened. "And where is Mr. Carter now?" Amanda wiped her tears. "I don't know. He said he was going to finish what he started." A chill ran through the courtroom. The judge ordered security to stay with me at all times. My house became a fortress with officers stationed outside. Yet every night I felt him watching. Then, one evening, as I was sitting by my window, I saw a figure standing across the street. Even from a distance, I knew it was David. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared at me. My heart pounded as I called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. Days turned into a week, and the tension grew unbearable. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The trial was nearing its end, and my testimony would decide everything. But deep down, I feared David wouldn't let it reach that point. On the morning of the final hearing, I walked into the courthouse surrounded by officers. The air was thick with anticipation. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing, questions flying. As I sat down, I felt eyes on me. I scanned the room, and there he was, sitting at the very back, his face half hidden under a hood. The judge began the session, but my mind was on David. What was he planning? Why was he here? Then, just as the judge asked me to take the stand, David stood. His hood fell back, revealing a face twisted with desperation. "This ends now," he shouted, pulling something from his pocket. Gasps erupted. Security lunged toward him. Time slowed. My heart stopped. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the cold floor, voices shouting around me, sirens blaring. Someone was holding my hand, saying, "Stay with us, Evelyn. You're going to be okay." But in the chaos, one thought consumed me. What did David pull out of his pocket? And what was he about to do before they stopped him? The next chapter will reveal the terrifying truth of what my son had planned, and how that moment changed everything forever. Stay with me because this fight is far from over. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. When I woke up in the hospital, the bright white ceiling above me felt almost blinding. A soft beep from the heart monitor echoed in the background, and the smell of antiseptic filled the air. My body ached all over, but I was alive. A nurse leaned over me and whispered, "You're safe now, Mrs. Carter. The police stopped him before he could hurt you." Her words made my stomach churn. What was he holding?" I asked with a weak voice. The nurse's eyes softened, but she hesitated. "It was a knife. They disarmed him just in time." Tears welled in my eyes. My own son had tried to kill me. Even after everything, a part of me hoped there was still some love left in him. But at that moment, I realized he was gone, consumed by greed and hate. Mr. Daniels entered the room soon after. His face tense but relieved to see me awake. "Evelyn," he said gently, "you've been through hell, but we're so close to ending this. The evidence is overwhelming, and Amanda's confession sealed most of the case. The only thing left is your testimony." My hands trembled as I gripped his. "I'll testify. I'll tell them everything." 2 days later, I stood in court again, frail but determined. The room was silent as I walked to the stand. Cameras clicked, pens scratched, and the world watched as I told my story. I spoke of every moment: the abuse, the manipulation, the poison, the nights I cried myself to sleep believing I was losing my mind. I told them about the letter from my husband warning me, and the envelope I clutched like a lifeline. When I finished, the courtroom was dead silent. The judge looked at me with something like respect. Then he turned to David, who sat handcuffed between 2 officers, his face pale and defeated. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, his voice like steel, "your actions are reprehensible. You attempted to harm your own mother, the very person who gave you life. This court finds you guilty of elder abuse, fraud, attempted murder, and several other charges." Amanda sobbed loudly as she was also sentenced for her part in the crimes. David didn't shed a single tear. He only stared at me with empty eyes as he was led away. I thought that would be the end, but as he passed me, he whispered under his breath, "You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming." His words haunted me for days. Even with him behind bars, I couldn't shake the feeling that his threat wasn't empty. The trial ended in my favor. My assets were secured, my name cleared, and the court publicly acknowledged me as the victim. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers reached out with sympathy and admiration. But at night, when the world was quiet, fear still crept into my heart. One evening, while cleaning out my late husband's old desk, I found something that stopped me cold. Hidden in a false bottom was a USB drive. I plugged it into my computer, my hands trembling, and found dozens of files. Financial records, property deeds, and a document titled, "For Evelyn's Eyes Only." When I opened it, my husband's voice filled the room through a recorded message. "Evelyn, if you're hearing this, it means you've discovered the truth. I've been hiding assets for years. Properties, accounts, investments, worth far more than anyone knows. I feared David would try to take them if he ever learned. You must protect this information. It's your shield." I sat frozen, realizing my husband's foresight had saved me from losing everything. But it also explained why David was so desperate, so obsessed. He must have known there was more to my wealth than what was visible. The next morning, I handed the files to Mr. Daniels. His eyes widened as he scanned through them. "Evelyn, this is huge. This will not only secure your future but also expose the depth of their scheme." However, when I returned home that night, something felt wrong. The front door was slightly ajar, and a cold draft swept through the hallway. I stepped inside cautiously, calling out, "Hello? Who's there?" No one answered. But in the middle of my living room, taped to the wall, was a note. It read, "You can lock me up, but you can't stop what's coming." My heart pounded. Was David orchestrating something from prison? Or was there someone else involved? Someone I didn't even know about? As I stood there, the phone rang, startling me. I answered with a shaky hand. A voice I didn't recognize said, "Mrs. Carter, they're not finished with you. Watch your back." The line went dead. That night I didn't sleep. Every sound made me jump, every shadow seemed to move. I knew the battle wasn't over. The threats were real, and whoever was behind them wasn't going to stop until they got what they wanted. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't going to stop either. The storm was far from over, and the next wave would be even more dangerous. The secret network behind David's greed was about to reveal itself, and I would need every ounce of strength to survive what was coming. Stay with me, because what happens next will turn everything upside down. You don't want to miss it. Like, comment, and subscribe to follow my story to the very end. The morning after that chilling phone call, I decided I couldn't sit back and wait for the next attack. If David was pulling strings from prison, or if someone else was involved, I had to uncover the truth before it was too late. I called Mr. Daniels and explained everything. The open door, the threatening note, the anonymous voice warning me. His tone turned grave. "Evelyn, this isn't just about your son anymore. Someone else is invested in this. We need to dig deeper." Later that day we met in his office. He had already pulled records from the files my late husband left behind. As he spread them out on the table, a pattern emerged. Several properties and accounts were linked to shell companies, and some transactions traced back to names I didn't recognize. "These aren't just investments," Mr. Daniels said. "These are assets your husband hid from powerful people. If David found out, he may have tried to sell the information. That could explain why someone else is threatening you now." My chest tightened. So I'm not just fighting my son. I'm fighting whoever he's involved with. "Exactly," he replied. "And they're not going to stop." That night, I returned home and sat alone in the living room, staring at the letter from my husband. I whispered to myself, "What did you get us into?" The house was quiet, but the quiet was oppressive, as if someone was holding their breath in the shadows. I decided to install more cameras around the house, inside and out. If they came for me again, I would have proof. For hours I couldn't sleep, so I sat watching the monitors. Then, around 3 a.m., one of the outside cameras picked up movement. A man in a dark hoodie walked slowly around the perimeter of my property, stopping occasionally to look straight into the camera. My blood froze. He wasn't trying to hide. He wanted me to know he was there. He held up a piece of paper to the lens before walking away. When I retrieved it the next morning, my heart sank. The message was simple but terrifying. "The lawyer can't save you. Give us what we want." I immediately handed the note to the police, but they had little to go on. The threats were escalating, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they tried something bolder. The next court date arrived, and security around me was tighter than ever. Amanda, who had turned against David to save herself, testified once again. She admitted that David had been in contact with dangerous people, who promised to help him launder stolen money. "They're not just criminals," she said, her voice trembling. "They're ruthless. They told David they'd kill anyone who got in their way, including his own mother." The judge listened carefully, taking notes. But the real bombshell came when Amanda mentioned a name: Victor Hale. According to her, he was the man funding David's plan, a man known in underground circles for using intimidation to control his targets. As soon as she said the name, a hush fell over the room. Even the officers looked uneasy. I had never heard of Victor Hale, but from the way everyone reacted, I knew this was someone who didn't play games. After court, Mr. Daniels pulled me aside. "Evelyn, if Victor Hale is involved, you need to be extra careful. This man doesn't just threaten. He acts." I felt my knees weaken, but I straightened my back. "Then we fight back harder." That evening, as I walked to my car in the courthouse parking lot, I noticed a black SUV idling nearby. My security detail ushered me inside quickly, but not before I caught a glimpse of a man in the driver's seat, staring at me with cold, unblinking eyes. I didn't know who he was, but I had a sinking feeling it was one of Hale's men. The following days were a blur of fear and strategy. Mr. Daniels and I began working on a plan to expose not only David but also the network behind him. We prepared documents, testimonies, and video evidence that would tie everything together. But just when I thought we had the upper hand, disaster struck. One night, I woke to the smell of smoke. My house was on fire. Panic surged through me as I stumbled out of bed, coughing from the thick smoke. Flames licked the walls, and the heat was unbearable. I grabbed my phone and called 911 while trying to make my way to the front door. The fire was spreading fast. As I reached the porch, I saw something that made my blood run cold: a can of gasoline and a matchbox lying on the steps. This wasn't an accident. Someone had tried to burn me alive. The firefighters arrived just in time to save me, but my home was badly damaged. As I sat on the curb, wrapped in a blanket, I saw a car speeding away down the street. Its taillights disappeared into the night, but I knew who had sent it. The police launched an arson investigation, but I wasn't waiting around for them to solve it. I told Mr. Daniels, "This is war now. They want me gone, but I'm not going anywhere." He nodded grimly. "Then we'll use this to our advantage. We'll show the court exactly how far they're willing to go." The next hearing would be the most dangerous yet, because the closer we got to the truth, the more desperate they became. And desperate enemies are the most unpredictable. As I prepared for that day, I kept the letter from my husband close to my heart. His words reminded me that I had something worth fighting for: my dignity, my freedom, my life. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the final battle was coming. And when it came, it would not be in the courtroom. Stay with me, because in the next chapter, the enemy will make their boldest move yet, and it will push me to the edge of life and death. Don't miss it. Like, comment, and subscribe, because the storm is about to break wide open. The night before the next court session, I barely slept. The smell of smoke still clung to my clothes, and every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. I had moved into a hotel under police protection, but fear followed me like a shadow. I knew Victor Hale, or whoever was working with him, wasn't done. They had failed to burn me alive, but they wouldn't stop until they silenced me completely. Morning came, and with it came a determination that burned brighter than my fear. I dressed in a simple navy suit, pinned my late husband's brooch to my chest, and told myself, "You are stronger than them." As my police escort drove me to the courthouse, I saw the same black SUV trailing at a distance. It didn't make any sudden moves, but its presence was a threat in itself. Inside the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Reporters filled every seat, their cameras ready to capture whatever unfolded. David was brought in wearing his prison jumpsuit, his expression cold and unreadable. Amanda sat hunched over, her hands trembling as she avoided my gaze. The judge called the session to order, and Mr. Daniels began presenting the new evidence: the arson attempt, the threatening notes, and the suspicious sightings of Hale's men. "Your Honor," he said firmly, "this is no longer just a case of family betrayal. This is organized intimidation." The judge looked to the prosecutors. "Have steps been taken to ensure Mrs. Carter's safety?" "Yes, Your Honor," one of them replied. "But we believe the network involved is larger than anticipated. We are coordinating with federal agents to investigate Mr. Hale's operations." As the judge nodded, David suddenly laughed, a cold, unsettling sound that silenced the room. "You think you can protect her," he sneered. "You have no idea what's coming." Security tightened their grip on him, but his words sent a chill down my spine. Even behind bars, he was confident. That could only mean one thing: he had help on the outside. Then, something unexpected happened. The courtroom doors opened, and a tall man in a dark suit walked in. His presence commanded attention. He exuded power and menace. He took a seat in the back row. His eyes locked on me with a predatory calm. I didn't need an introduction. I knew this had to be Victor Hale. The judge frowned. "Who is that man?" Before anyone could answer, Hale spoke with a smooth, icy voice. "Just an interested party observing the proceedings." The bailiffs moved toward him, but he raised his hands. "Relax. I'm not here to cause trouble today." The tension in the room skyrocketed. My heart raced, but I held my chin high. If he wanted to intimidate me, he would have to try harder. The hearing continued, and the prosecution revealed more of David's dealings with Hale's organization. Emails, bank transfers, and coded messages proving their collaboration. Hale watched with an amused expression, as though none of it mattered. When the judge adjourned for the day, I stood to leave, but Hale rose as well. As I passed by, he leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "You're brave, Mrs. Carter. But bravery won't save you when the time comes." Froze, my breath catching. Before I could respond, he walked out, leaving the echo of his threat hanging in the air. That evening, Mr. Daniels urged me to go into protective custody, but I refused. "If I run, they win," I said. "I will not spend the rest of my life hiding." Instead, we focused on gathering every piece of evidence possible. Mr. Daniels worked tirelessly, coordinating with law enforcement to build a case against Hale. Meanwhile, I began to recall every detail of my husband's secret files, trying to piece together anything that could give us leverage. Late one night, while going through the USB drive again, I discovered something hidden in one of the folders. A video file labeled Final Insurance. My hands trembled as I clicked on it. My husband appeared on the screen, looking older than I remembered. His expression serious. "Evelyn," he said, "if you're watching this, it means they've found you. You need to know the truth. Victor Hale isn't just after the money. He's after control. Years ago, I refused to partner with him in a scheme that would have made him rich and untouchable. He swore revenge. That's why I hid our assets. If he gets them, he wins. You must not let that happen." Tears streamed down my face as the video ended. My husband's final words were a warning and a call to fight. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I handed the video to Mr. Daniels and the police. "This is the key," I said. "We use this to expose Hale, to take down his entire operation." But before we could act, the threat became real. That night, as I prepared to leave the hotel with my security detail, the power suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the halls. My guards shouted, drawing their weapons, but before they could react, a shadow moved fast, too fast. Glass shattered, and the emergency lights flickered on. One of the officers was on the ground, unconscious. A masked figure stood in the doorway, holding a silenced gun aimed directly at me. Time froze. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I whispered a prayer, gripping the letter from my husband in my pocket. And then, out of nowhere, a second figure tackled the gunman to the ground. Shots rang out, echoing through the hotel corridor. I screamed as chaos erupted around me. When the smoke cleared, the gunman lay handcuffed, groaning. The man who saved me removed his mask. It was an undercover agent sent by the feds. "Mrs. Carter," he said, catching his breath, "you're lucky we got here when we did. But this isn't over. Hale just declared war." My knees gave out, but I forced myself to stand. "Then tell him," I said through clenched teeth. He picked the wrong grandmother to mess with. The next court date would not only determine David's fate but also expose Hale to the world. But the closer we got to the finish, the more dangerous the game became. Stay with me, because in the next chapter, the war explodes into the open, and what happens will shake the city to its core. You won't believe how close I came to losing everything. Like, comment, and subscribe, because the climax is coming. The city seemed to hold its breath as the day of the climactic court session arrived. This wasn't just about me anymore. It had grown into something bigger. Bigger than my family, bigger than my pain. Reporters lined the courthouse steps like vultures, waiting to see what would unfold. When I stepped out of the black SUV with my security detail, cameras flashed, Microphones were shoved in my face, and questions flew at me. "Mrs. Carter, do you fear for your life? Do you believe Victor Hale will retaliate today?" I said nothing. I just walked straight into the courthouse with my head held high, clutching my late husband's brooch as if it were armor. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. The federal agents had joined local police, their presence a clear message that they expected trouble. At the far end of the room sat Victor Hale, calm and composed, dressed in an immaculate suit. He looked like a man attending a business meeting, not a criminal facing exposure. His eyes followed me as I took my seat, and his lips curled into a cold smile. David was brought in next, his wrists in cuffs, his face pale. He looked different, less arrogant, more desperate. Yet when his eyes met mine, there was still a flicker of hate. Amanda avoided eye contact entirely, her hands shaking as she clutched a tissue. The judge called the court to order, and Mr. Daniels began with the evidence we had been saving for this very moment, the video recording from my husband. When the screen lit up with his image, the room fell silent. "Evelyn," my husband's voice said, "if you're watching this, it means they're coming for everything. Protect what we've built. Victor Hale must never gain control. He is dangerous, and his greed has no limit. Trust no one but those you know are loyal. This message is my final gift to you." Gasps filled the courtroom as the judge leaned forward, his expression stern. The video continued, revealing documents and transactions implicating Hale in multiple crimes: money laundering, fraud, intimidation. Hale sat back, still smiling, as though he were untouchable. Mr. Daniels turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this recording ties Victor Hale directly to the criminal activities surrounding this case. We have corroborating evidence from federal agents confirming the validity of these claims." For the first time, Hale spoke. His voice was smooth, almost mocking. "Your Honor, this is hearsay from a dead man. None of this proves I did anything illegal. These accusations are the desperate attempts of a senile old woman and her greedy lawyer." His words stung, but I stood, my voice steady. "You can call me old. You can call me weak. But you can't call me a liar. I have survived everything you and my son threw at me, and I will survive this too. You wanted to break me, but here I stand." The judge banged his gavel. "Enough. This court will hear all evidence before rendering a verdict." As the hearing continued, tension mounted. The agents presented files, witnesses testified, and piece by piece, Hale's empire of intimidation unraveled. Every new revelation hit like a hammer. Bribes to officials, threats to witnesses, offshore accounts. Hale's calm demeanor began to crack, his jaw tightening, his hands clenching the armrests of his chair. Then came the turning point. One of the federal agents walked in with a flash drive containing surveillance footage from the night my house was burned. The video showed two masked men pouring gasoline and lighting the fire, and then climbing into a black SUV registered to one of Hale's companies. The room erupted. Hale stood abruptly, his face red with fury. "This is a setup," he shouted. "You have no proof I ordered this." But his outburst only sealed his fate. The judge ordered him detained on the spot, and federal agents moved to cuff him. As they dragged him out, he turned his head toward me and snarled, "This isn't over, old woman. I have friends everywhere." For a brief moment, fear gripped me. But then I realized, I wasn't alone. The agents, the court, and the truth were finally on my side. The hearing adjourned for the day, and I stepped outside into the flashing lights of cameras, surrounded by agents. Reporters screamed questions, but I walked straight to the SUV, my head high. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield was changing in my favor. That night, however, something happened that nearly cost me everything. While under police protection in a safe house, I received a text message from an unknown number. It read, "They got Victor, but they didn't get me. I'm coming for you, Mom. Tonight." The officers scrambled to secure the house, but my heart raced. If David was out there, desperate and cornered, he was more dangerous than ever. Hours passed in tense silence, every creak in the floor making me jump. Then, around 2 a.m., the power went out again. The safe house was plunged into darkness. The officers shouted orders, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. And then I heard it, the sound of a window shattering upstairs. One of the agents rushed toward the noise, but before he could reach the stairs, a figure darted down, moving with terrifying speed. It was David. His face was twisted with rage, his eyes wild. He lunged at me, shouting, "You ruined everything." The agents tackled him just inches away from where I stood. The struggle was brutal, furniture crashing, shouts echoing. Finally, they pinned him to the floor, handcuffing him as he spat curses at me. As they dragged him away, he screamed, "You haven't seen the last of me." My knees buckled, and the agents helped me to a chair. I was shaking, but I was alive. David's threat echoed in my mind, but I knew something he didn't. This was the last time he'd ever have power over me. The final court date was set for the following week. Everything, my dignity, my freedom, my life, would be decided then. And I vowed to walk into that courtroom and finish this fight once and for all. Stay with me, because in the next chapter the final battle begins. What happens next will bring justice crashing down on those who tried to destroy me. Like, comment, and subscribe, because the endgame is here. The final court session loomed like a storm cloud, heavy and inevitable. 4 days, the media swirled with headlines. Elderly woman stands against crime syndicate. Victor Hale behind bars, and son turns on mother in desperate scheme. Everywhere I turned, people were talking about me. Some in admiration, some in disbelief. But I didn't care about the noise. My only focus was finishing this battle with my head high. On the morning of the hearing, I stood in front of the mirror in my hotel room, staring at my reflection. My face bore the lines of every tear, every sleepless night, every fight I'd survived. Yet behind those lines was a strength I hadn't seen in years. "You're stronger than them," I whispered to myself. "Finish this." The courthouse was swarming with reporters and extra security. Federal agents lined the halls, their eyes scanning for threats. The black SUV that had once followed me was nowhere to be seen, replaced by armored vehicles carrying Hale and David to their final reckoning. When I entered the courtroom, silence fell. The judge looked stern, the prosecutors confident, and the spectators tense with anticipation. David sat handcuffed at the defense table, his face hollowed by days of defeat, but his eyes still burned with hatred. Hale, on the other hand, remained cold and composed, as though even in chains he believed he was untouchable. The session began with the prosecution laying out every piece of evidence against them: video footage, documents, testimonies, and my husband's final message. The judge listened intently, his pen moving slowly as he noted each damning fact. Amanda was called to testify once more. She walked to the stand, trembling. Her voice quivered as she confessed everything again, this time in greater detail, naming not only Hale but also the network of men he worked with. "They promised us power and money," she said, tears streaking her face. "But it was all lies. They wanted to destroy her, to take control." The court gasped when Amanda admitted they had planned to fake my death to claim my estate. Even I felt my breath catch in my chest. The judge's face darkened. "This is not only reprehensible, it is criminal on every level." Then it was my turn. As I walked to the stand, the room held its breath. My legs felt heavy, but my heart was steady. I took the oath, sat down, and looked straight at the judge. I told my story in full, every slap, every threat, every drop of poison they slipped into my tea. I described the night they tried to burn me alive, the figure that lurked in the dark, the terror of hearing my own son's voice whispering death threats. I spoke of my husband's foresight, of the love that gave me the strength to keep fighting. My voice cracked at times, but I never stopped speaking. When I finished, the judge leaned back, his face unreadable. For a long moment there was silence. Then he said, "Mrs. Carter, your testimony is not just credible. It is powerful. This court will take it into full consideration." David's lawyer tried to object, claiming I was playing the victim. The judge slammed the gavel. "Enough. The evidence speaks for itself. Just as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. One of Hale's men, who had slipped past security, pulled a gun and shouted, "This ends now." The room descended into chaos. Federal agents moved fast, tackling him to the ground before he could fire. Spectators screamed, reporters ducked, and I sat frozen in my seat, clutching the edge of the stand. The gun clattered to the floor, and the man was dragged out in handcuffs, shouting Hale's name like a battle cry. Hale remained silent, but for the first time his calm facade cracked. A vein throbbed in his forehead, and his jaw tightened. He knew his empire was crumbling. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order! Order!" The room fell silent again, trembling with adrenaline. Finally the judge spoke. His voice was firm and final. "David Carter and Victor Hale, this court finds you both guilty on all counts: abuse, fraud, attempted murder, arson, and conspiracy. You will both serve life sentences without the possibility of parole." The courtroom erupted in applause. Reporters rushed to capture every word, every expression. David screamed, "You'll regret this, Mom. You'll regret it," as he was dragged out kicking and cursing. Hale said nothing, but his eyes locked on me with a hatred so deep it chilled my bones. When the session ended, the judge approached me privately. "Mrs. Carter," he said softly, "you are one of the bravest women I have ever seen stand in this courtroom. Today, justice prevailed because you refused to be silenced." Tears streamed down my face. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. But just as I stepped out into the sunlight, a single piece of paper fluttered at my feet. I bent down to pick it up. It was a note, written in crude handwriting. "Prison walls can't hold everyone forever. Watch your back." My heart skipped a beat. Even with them locked away, their threats still lingered like a dark shadow. But I straightened my shoulders and whispered to myself, "Let them try. I've survived worse." That night, as I sat in the quiet of my hotel room, I realized something profound. No matter how much they had tried to break me, they had only made me stronger. The final hearing was scheduled for the following morning, where the court would officially close the case and distribute the estate. I knew I would win, but I also knew something unexpected would happen. Something that would bring one last shocking twist to this story. Stay with me, because in the final chapter, everything comes full circle. The truth about my husband's legacy, my son's betrayal, and the final move that no one saw coming will be revealed. Don't miss it. Like, comment, and subscribe, because the ending will leave you speechless. The morning of the final court hearing dawned bright, almost deceptively peaceful. The sun streamed through the hotel window, as if mocking the chaos that had consumed my life these past months. I dressed slowly, deliberately, in a cream suit that had belonged to my late husband's favorite collection. Today was not only about justice, it was about reclaiming my dignity. Outside, the courthouse was packed. Reporters shouted my name as soon as I stepped out of the SUV, their cameras flashing like lightning. "Mrs. Carter, how does it feel knowing today ends it all? Are you afraid of further retaliation?" I didn't answer. My silence was louder than any words I could have spoken. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with an energy that made my heart race. Federal agents stood watch on every corner. David sat hunched over, no longer defiant, just empty. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair a mess, his wrists cuffed tightly. Hale, still in his sharp suit, sat with his chin high, the picture of a man who refused to believe he had lost, even though the verdict had already sealed his fate. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. "Today," he said, "we close this chapter of one of the most disturbing cases of elder abuse and criminal conspiracy I have seen in my career." His words echoed in the chamber. The court recognizes Mrs. Evelyn Carter not only as the rightful owner of her estate, but also as a victim who showed extraordinary courage. Her testimony and the evidence presented have dismantled an entire network of corruption. My hands trembled as he continued. "All assets unlawfully taken are to be returned to her, with added damages. Furthermore, Properties hidden through fraudulent shell companies are hereby transferred fully under her control. A gasp rippled through the room. David's head snapped up, his mouth falling open. Hale clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles whitened. I sat still, calm, letting the words sink in. Then, just as the judge prepared to adjourn, an unexpected voice spoke. From the back of the room a man stood. He was tall with salt and pepper hair, wearing an expensive suit that didn't match the ordinary spectators. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "I have something to say." The bailiff stepped forward. "Sir, you can't." He held up a document. "I have proof that changes everything." The judge frowned. "Bring it here." The man handed over a folder. As the judge flipped through it, his brows furrowed. "Where did you get this?" he asked sharply. The man smiled coldly. "From someone who's been watching from the shadows." My heart pounded. What new twist was this? The judge read aloud. "These documents show that several offshore accounts tied to Victor Hale are also linked to a third party, someone inside law enforcement who's been feeding him information. This could compromise parts of the investigation." Gasps filled the courtroom. The agents exchanged tense glances. Hale smirked. The judge slammed the gavel. "This will be investigated further, but it does not change today's verdict." As the man turned to leave, he glanced at me and said, "This isn't over, Mrs. Carter. You've won today, but the game is bigger than you know." Then he walked out, vanishing before anyone could stop him. My stomach twisted with dread. There were still more layers to this nightmare. But before fear could consume me, the judge's final words rang out. "This court is adjourned. Justice has been served, for now." The room erupted into applause. Reporters rushed to capture my reaction, but I simply stood, my head high. As David was dragged past me, he spat. "You'll die alone, old woman." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "No, David. I'll live free. You'll die in chains." Hale was escorted out next, his face unreadable, his eyes promising revenge even from behind bars. Outside the courthouse, the crowd cheered as I walked down the steps. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. I had survived everything they threw at me, and I was still standing. That night, I returned to what was left of my house. It smelled faintly of smoke, but it was mine. I walked through the halls slowly, touching the walls, whispering, "We made it, John." In my bedroom, I opened the safe one last time. Inside, alongside the documents, was the brooch my husband had given me years ago. I pinned it to my chest and sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window at the moon. The phone rang suddenly, making me jump. I answered cautiously. A deep voice said, "Enjoy your victory, Mrs. Carter. But remember, the world you just walked into doesn't forgive easily." The line went dead. I sat there, my hand trembling, but then I smiled faintly. "Let them come," I whispered. "I'm not afraid anymore." I had lost my son, but I had gained something priceless. My freedom, my dignity, my life back. And no one could take that from me again. To anyone listening to my story, remember this. Never let anyone convince you that you're powerless. Stand tall, no matter how dark it gets, because the truth always finds its way to the light. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this fight. If this story touched you, share it, comment and subscribe because your story matters too.